Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the mysteries of the past, and the uncharted frontiers of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders rather than experts. Together we'll unravel the tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into the dualities that shape our understanding of reality. On Duality Check, I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean, and welcome to episode number 90.
90 is crazy. Woo!
Yeah, dude.
We are closing in on our 2-year anniversary
Yeah.
of posting, which was New Year.
That's
New Year's
right.
Day or something like that, I
Yeah.
believe. 2 years ago.
Almost at a century of episodes,
Yeah.
which is sick.
Very crazy.
Appreciate
Appreciate y'all hanging out with us this long if you've been here from the beginning.
Totally. And if you're new, then welcome.
Welcome.
We've got a bunch of random stuff, and then we're hoping to kind of finish out the chapter
Owaspy.
of Owaspy that we were in, which hopefully will get us to a nice point where we can move on to some other topics, give Owaspy a little break, and then come back to it.
Yeah, we want to set the stage for kind of what you can expect for the book series
Right.
on Owaspy, and then
it's
then
such a
move into
big book.
something
There's
else.
no way we can just keep going through it unless, it would make an entire podcast about Owaspy for years,
Yeah.
which
But we're hoping that too, with our new podcast setup coming soon, we'll be able to kind of do multiple recordings. And then, so maybe we could do just record a whole episode on Owaspy, whether we release it or not,
yeah.
and just have them ready to go.
Yeah, actually, that would be pretty cool to just pre-record a bunch of them. And then when we have a week where we kind of need to take a week, we can throw one of those in.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway.
Thanks for bearing with us during our weeks that we keep skipping. There's a lot of setting up going on after the move, and
just life in general this time of the year is kind of busy, and work gets busy.
Hopefully we can get this will be our second one in the hopper, so we'll have a little bit of pre-recording to hopefully help us with upcoming holidays and whatnot. And
it's nice to have that.
Yeah. So, let's hop into this.
You brought some stuff.
You brought more, but
I did bring more, but a lot of mine are clips and stuff. So
for sure,
that'll be interesting to talk about. So
cool.
But yeah.
Well, let's start at the top here. Let's see.
And I can't remember if we've played this on another episode or not. I couldn't remember because it's kind of been in my links folder that I have, or whatever. But
I don't recall seeing this lady at all. But
she's kind of unimportant to the actual clip itself.
She's the interviewer.
Yeah,
I'm assuming.
But anyway, there's another clip that I prepared. I'm not sure if you have it as the next one or not, but
do you want to do that first?
No, so we'll do that one, and then we'll go into the other one with Jesse. Yeah, the next one. Yeah.
All right. Let's check this out. Cool. Let's check this out again without muted. I don't like the way they do this.
So this is Al Worden, who was a Apollo 15 command module pilot back in the 70s. So just a little bit of pretext. We'll read this again after. So just so you know who it is.
Furthest than anyone has ever been from any human being.
That's what they say, but I never calculated it, so I don't really know. I went around the moon 75 times, 150 hours, 6 days.
Do you think there's extraterrestrials out there, Al, as well?
What?
Do you think there's...
I've been asked that question hundreds of times. Do you believe in aliens? And I say, yeah. Have you ever seen one? I say, yeah, I have. Well, how have you seen them? Well, I said, I look in the mirror every morning. Because that's what we are. we are the aliens, but we just
think we're the thing.
We just think they're somebody else, but we're the ones who came from somewhere else. Because somebody else had to survive, and they got in a little spacecraft, and they came here, and they landed, and they started civilization here. That's what I believe. And if you
Interesting.
if you don't believe me, go get books on the ancient Sumerians and see what they had.
That's a whole different
Interesting.
They'll tell you right up front.
blown that right open.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's bad when you can't get into that.
You're the first.
You can't get into that.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting. I didn't pick that up the first time I listened to it, but then I was like, and if you just hear the banter as he's explaining, he's just like, oh, you're just going straight into it. Well, we shouldn't get into that. Like they're just kind of
Yeah.
like trying to stop him, but he's just like, no, I'm just going to say what I want to say.
Yeah.
And then he says that at the end. We can't get into that.
The Sumerian stuff is really pretty interesting. And I mean, it does seem to, it seems to be a story of intelligent beings coming here and creating us.
It's just having firsthand knowledge of what the actual texts are talking about and saying, and like the actual
Yeah.
story.
Right.
Getting somebody that you can 100% verify the authenticity of the.
Well, there was the whole Zechariah Sitchin thing, right? And
Right.
he got huge, right? I don't know how many of his books or any have you read, but he had a whole series and breaking down his version of like his interpretation of the Sumerian
Texts, right.
texts. And he has pretty opinionated translations. And if you go back and you look at his translations in context to the time he lived, he seemed to be pulling from whatever his modern knowledge of space travel through rocketry,
Right.
and referring to that, suggesting that that's the type of technology they were using. Which
Not necessarily knowing what the future was going to hold.
yeah, well, he didn't seem to be. I don't know that he was like into the whole UFO phenomena and into
Right.
the whole like anti-gravity
Right.
ideas that go along with it.
So he was more like, and he kind of thought more of like it was actual, just like other, civilizations having the same kind of technology we have.
Well, like for instance, he thought the Triskelion. That's the you know what that is? That's the one in Lebanon that has the giant like 1,000-ton megaliths that the Romans
I've
then
heard
built a
that,
temple
but-
on top of. What's the name for it?
Is this where the tablets were found?
No. This is in Lebanon. This is more like southeastern Mediterranean.
Okay.
And so, it's pretty close, but not like it's in the general vicinity, but not really.
It's in that kind of the Fertile Crescent area, like.
Yeah, but more towards the Mediterranean, less inland.
Okay.
Like the whole like Sumerian Empire was like with it around the Tigris and Euphrates in the Middle East, modern day Iraq. So it's a
Yeah,
little further
okay.
east than like Lebanon and the Eastern Mediterranean. But it's within a range that like civilizations around about
Would
those areas
spread
probably
to.
would have
Yeah.
had contact, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's those gigantic, like the biggest stones, like the 1,200. That's where there's that one that's like 1,200 tons, and it's like
Yeah.
not fully quarried.
That's right. I can't. There's a nickname for that stone. I
Yeah,
can't
what's
remember it.
the name for that site? Oh, for the stone, I think something. The stone of the pregnant mother.
That's
or something
right.
like
The pregnant lady stone or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Baalbek. That's what.
That's it. Yeah.
Baalbek in Lebanon. Anyway, those three, Zechariah Sitchin, his take was that, sort of like a bunch of ancient theorists like Graham and stuff think is that the Romans did not build it. In fact, they just built their temple on top of this giant
To kind of claim it. Yeah.
mount that they found, right?
Right.
But Zechariah's take is that it was a giant flat like landing and takeoff platform for like ancient rockets.
I see. So like the megalithic stones were more like supports for this or something.
Yeah,
Like support stones for what would have been covered up.
Mm-hmm. Like if you go to Cape Cod or whatever, and you see like the NASA launch sites, they got these big,
massive pillars holding up
that
platforms
the rockets are going to be taken off from and whatnot. So he kind of thought it was that. Anyway, but Zechariah is interesting. I actually saw him live once.
I remember you telling me that,
Went to this, I think it's called the Conscious Life Expo. I think that's what it was called. It was in LA, and I went with a buddy of mine. This was years ago, maybe 10, 15, maybe even longer. But it was before Zechariah Sitchin died, and we got to watch him talk. And in person, he was talking about like people at NASA who have contacted him and told him that, like, you know, you're right, but like no one will ever acknowledge that and stuff like that. And then there was this whole like Zechariah Sitchin is wrong movement. And there's a whole website, ZechariahSitchinIsWrong.com,
yeah,
where they talk about how he was basically just imposing his interpretation. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the broad strokes of, he did still sort of do a service in like introducing the broad strokes of the Sumerian mythology, which even if you don't impose his particular translations, like
there's large chunks
like
of it
the
that are
word
still
Shem
pretty,
meaning ship and stuff like that.
Like some of the specifics.
Yeah. Still the broad strokes of the Sumerian mythology are that the Anunnaki came down from the heavens and created humanity to serve them, basically.
Right. But a lot of people would twist that to be spiritual instead of scientific, or factual in some metaphor instead of it being
like a mythological story.
Yeah.
But then when you put it in context of all of the religions of the world, and they all seem to have this element of like heavenly entities
coming down and interacting with humans and helping them, guiding them to start their, civilizations all around the world.
Right.
Different figures.
And the Sumerians do basically, with the Epic of Gilgamesh, have the origin of like the Noah's Ark story.
Yeah.
Anyway, super fascinating stuff. And it's interesting that this Apollo astronaut is referring to the Sumerian works after what he's been through
in space. Yeah. So
So
in the beginning, when they started that clip, she was saying he is accredited as being the only the one person to be the farthest away from is another human being. That's what sparked that whole.
I wonder if that's because the nature of the Apollo missions, right, is that like they send the ship out there, and they have to drop the lander, but then someone has to stay in the ship that orbits the moon while the others are down on the moon. So the ones on the moon might be technically closer to the Earth, while the person stuck in the ship has to orbit around the back side of the moon.
Right.
It's got the whole moon between him and the rest of humanity.
Yep.
Which is crazy. So yeah, if you were that person who stays there in the ship,
you
orbiting,
would be considered.
You would be the one furthest away.
Furthest away from any other human being.
Yeah. And no one's been any further than the moon that we know of publicly, right?
So the next clip with Jesse I wanted to go into, because he kind of talks about the kind of early human, and whether we may or may not have actually, evolved here, or if we were actually brought here from another planet.
Oh, cool. Let's check this out.
It was just a few years back when a group of scientists from Japan and NASA actually confirmed something extraordinary. They reanalyzed fragments from 3 ancient meteorites that had fallen in Canada, the US, and Australia. And they discovered that all of them gave off the fundamental building blocks needed to form DNA and RNA. This added weight to an old but persistent theory of the beginning of life on Earth, that the spark had not originated here, but had arrived here.
But the potential is there. Yes, it's something that we would do. If we were facing a complete extinction of life on planet Earth, a major global effort would be made to preserve it somehow. and that might well include firing off cryogenic chambers into the universe and hoping that some of them would land somewhere hospitable.
Every culture that I've talked to indigenously around the planet all say they were seeded on this planet by Pleiadians or other beings, star brothers.
It was just
Yeah, I mean,
I got a different take on it, but it's a same idea.
yeah.
Like, you're not necessarily like, because even if, aliens brought us here, right? Like, our ancestors were the ones who actually traveled the universe to get here and then settle. It makes more sense for this kind of a thing to where we just they sent out their DNA into the, into the cosmos, hoping that it would land somewhere that it could grow.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there. Maybe I'll try and find this during the break, but there was a clip from Randall Carlson I watched this week, going over his thoughts on the whole 3i Atlas and sort of giving like a class on like what are comets and what is the nature of the solar system. And he shows this really awesome graphic showing like a zoomed out version of the solar system with like the Oort cloud and the Kuiper disk and the little tiny nucleus at the center, which is the entire solar system we know about, right? Like the part where you learn in school with the planets. But when you're zoomed out to that scale, it just looks like the nucleus of an atom or of a cell. It's tiny compared to the mass. And if you think about what comets are doing, like they're coming in from this Oort cloud, and they're coming close to the sun, and they're outgassing all this stuff, and then coming back out. And so if they happen to have organic matter or the building blocks of life, they can pollute the inner solar system with that stuff for the planets to then pick up. And if the conditions are right for that life to grow, and vice versa, like let's say you're in a solar system where their life develops on a planet and then comets come in, a planet with an atmosphere is constantly gassing off some of that atmosphere in its tail because of the solar wind, right?
Yeah.
And so you would think if there's life on that planet, some of that could be gassed out into space and then picked up by these comets. And then if there are events that cause the matter in the Oort cloud to we come close to another solar system or whatever, can cause some of our outer Oort cloud comets to get taken with. You could see how it's almost like a mechanism for like the spreading of material between systems.
You know what it makes me wonder is if all the different species of animals and plants are brought here in the similar, like if we as humans, as bipedal, whatever, something like this was to have happened for our species, what if it was all individual species instead of the idea of evolution? Maybe as we go, there's eventually going to be new species that are going to be coming into contact with our solar system. The building blocks for them, maybe their DNA, RNA, something, and then it lands here and it has the compatibility with our resources to grow in its own way. So maybe every species, you think about all the different types of species and how different they are from one another.
Yeah, I mean, because here's the thing, like if there was an origin of life, let's just say within the Milky Way, and then based on all these principles of like comets and the movement and the star systems interacting,
and also like old stars exploding far away, and all of that energy being blasted across the universe.
Right, like imagine when our sun goes supernova, or if it picks up and the solar wind goes crazy and it like strips our Earth of its atmosphere. There's going to be a ton of life that gets gassed out into space.
Exactly.
And
it eventually land somewhere,
get picked up, and land elsewhere over time. And And so there may be like a slow sharing of material between
different
planets, like
Yeah.
the same way, like if you like take a sample of some bacteria and then you like put it in a new environment and watch it under a telescope, you'll see it like start to grow and colonize the area, right? As long as it has the conditions it needs.
Yep.
In a similar way, like if you zoom out on the Milky Way, like you could see like in a place where life starts and then events causing life to start drifting. And then I was thinking too, is like, depending on the advancement of the life that escapes, there would be a genetic record, because even modern simple bacteria should still have information about other life forms, right? Because there's constantly viruses going between life forms and pulling bits of genetic material and then injecting them into other animals and whatnot. And our own genome contains the entire history of our evolution, right? And so even something as deceptively simple as a bacterium may have enough information that could, in the right circumstances, develop very similar life forms to what we already have, because it already has the genetic material that proves the problem solving of how to figure out this and that variety of survival, right?
Yeah, man.
Anyway, yeah, I think the panspermia idea makes a ton of sense to me. I've heard other, I'd have to look it up, but there are some other like scientifically minded people who look at DNA and look at how early we know that life was here on Earth, and it's just like there is not enough time to develop DNA out of nowhere.
Right.
And so it's not that fringe of an idea to think that
it's kind of like
the event of DNA being developed may have happened off this planet.
Right. Just given the timescales for how likely it is to have developed within the, hundreds of millions of years that the Earth's been around.
And once you get like any type of living thing with DNA here, then it's just a matter of time for evolution to do its job and the life to diversify and end up coming up with all sorts of new novel solutions that are.
Yeah, and it's like, it makes me wonder, like dinosaurs and all these different, like there may have been so many different iterations of creatures who could have lived here on this planet at different times when the planet is habitable.
Yeah.
Like maybe there was other creatures that, smart lizards and smart, there were dinosaurs. We know there were giant birds and giant, lizards, creatures that lived here, millions of years ago. Who's to say that there was no, intelligence there?
Yeah.
But you don't even need intelligence necessarily, all this, but life.
I mean, there's definitely intelligence. It's just what level of intelligence, right?
But I mean, just like the fact that, in a different environment, like Earth itself was a different environment to what we are experiencing now, and life existed.
Right.
Things were completely different. And then there was an era where there was more carbon dioxide and more of the life-giving features that we experience today, more of them, warmer temperature, nice, lush, warm temperatures with more oxygen and more.
During the time of the dinosaurs, there was like 3 or 4 times the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere.
Which means it can support larger creatures.
There was huge plants and lush greenery. There was no polar caps. The oceans were higher, and Earth was a giant jungle, basically.
It was just a giant freaking jungle, and it was so green and so like habitable. Like giant creatures were able to be supported because there was so much more of an abundance of the resources.
Right.
And then there was volcanic times when they're like the Earth was tumultuous, but there was probably still life living in the extremes.
Snowball times.
And then,
and life seems to find a way whichever way.
And like we see that kind of now, and people are starting kind of getting the idea with like tardigrades and some of these like really extremophiles that they send into space and they put into, the Marianas Trench.
Or
And
the muck they find on the outside of the windows in the space station that they had to clean off because it was causing them cloudy. That was bacteria.
And that's bacteria film like growing on the outside of these spacecraft.
Right.
Because it gives them a medium to collect and to.
Which is like, no one thought bacteria could survive in space like that before.
So the idea is not insane.
Plus the announcement
Panspermia
in Mars
is not insane.
that they think they found life there or evidence for it.
People have been thinking Mars was a inhabited planet at one point. Like the scientists have, been theorizing that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And, even the philosophers or the faithful people, faithful class, I don't know what anybody who has faith, I guess.
Yeah.
Have been kind of thinking there was other places too in some obscure way, but
yeah.
I don't know. This stuff's fascinating though. Panspermia is not crazy. I think it's a very viable theory for how life germinates the universe.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you want to do another one here? Do you want to take a little break?
Is this going to start a whole nother thing?
It probably will.
Okay. Then, let's take a break here, and we'll be back in a few.
All right. Enjoy some music. We'll be right back.
Laughing Heart. Your life is your life. Be on the watch. There are ways out. There is light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness.
Welcome. That's for you, Amy.
The sultry sounds of Duality Check.
Yeah, I was just hanging out with our sister, Amy, who writes in, and she's basically our number one fan, listens to every episode. But she was telling me that she's like, every time you guys come back from break, it sounds like you guys are trying to just like make everybody fall asleep, or like sounds like one of those like late night talk shows where it's like, you know, they come back from after music like, welcome back to Radio 94.3. You know?
Yeah.
Which I guess we are kind of emulating that in a sense.
Yeah, that's probably subconsciously.
Yeah. I remember listening to those.
Should we try and do a whole podcast like this someday?
Yeah, I think we can do it. That would be funny. But yeah, that was for you, Amy, because I know you're listening.
All right, let's hop to this next clip you brought. Right. This is Randall Carlson.
Yeah, so this is I think this is similar to what you were talking about. Well, actually,
this looks like we're about to be talking about a meteor stream here.
Yeah. So let's just play this and we'll chat about it on the other side.
Here we go.
Coming up soon, we're heading into the fall cycle of meteor showers. And the two biggies are going to be the Taurid shower, which is going to peak right around Halloween, and the Leonid shower, which is going to peak right around November 17th. Comet is a celestial body moving about the sun in an elongated orbit, usually consisting of a central mass, which is the nucleus, surrounded by a misty envelope, the coma, which extends into a stream, which is the tail, in the direction away from the sun. And it's a very cool thing to see. Coming up soon,
Yeah, so this is just the yearly reminder from Randall about the Taurids and the Leonids.
The Leonids.
The two comet streams that the Earth and the solar system passes through.
The Earth
passes through each year. So yeah, we're coming up on that at the end of October and mid-November.
It looks like this might be a snip from the show I was talking about.
That's what I was getting to. But yeah, he also, I saw another one when I was scrolling through his stuff about that, the Three Eye Atlas one.
Yeah,
explaining some of it. Yeah.
It was a whole episode just about comets, and I think some of that was from it. But yeah, so you have the tail of the comet and you have the trail of the comet, I think is the two words they're using.
Yeah, the nucleus, which is the center mass of it, and then there's the halo or
the coma is what he called it.
The coma around it, which is the gaseous plume of it as it off gases when it gets closer to.
And then because of the solar winds, all the radiation and particles coming off the sun, it's like a constant wind
pushing away
out from the sun.
From the sun, yeah.
Those light particles end up getting pushed in the direction opposite the sun, whereas the more heavy particles that might be coming off, because if you think of a comet as like a body of dust and rock frozen together with like ice and different things that freeze further away from the sun, then as it starts to come close to the sun, some of that material starts heating up and outgassing, and then the heavier material that is being held together, like the dust and rocks that is being held together by the stuff that's outgassing, starts coming off too. So the heavier stuff doesn't get pushed in the opposite direction like the gases do because they're so light.
Yeah.
They get pushed away from the sun, but the heavier material sort of just leaves a trail in the wake of the comet's direction that it's coming. So that's why you'll sometimes see comets with these like what looks like two tails.
Right.
And sometimes at weird angles to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like the heavy particles are off-gassing or are leaving the comet in a different trajectory from the lighter gases.
where the comet's coming from. So
Right.
think of
So
it like
as it's moving, it's going in. It's always the direction in which it's coming, the direction in which the comet is moving in its trajectory, whereas the light particle tail that's being blown away is blowing directly away from the sun.
Right.
Whereas the other tail would be moving a little bit slightly off axis from the sun.
Well, it would be mostly in the path that the comet is coming from.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure that material is still affected by the solar winds a little bit, so it
That's
might
what I
shift
mean.
a little in the direction, but they're too heavy to just be blown
Blasted
straight
away.
away.
Yeah.
Right. So
But they're still being blown. It's just not as much of a obvious.
it takes more work to blow it, right? So yeah.
But those pieces still do come off the comet as it breaks up, as it moves closer.
So
in
when
its
they were
orbit.
in that episode where they were talking about 3i Atlas and comparing it to normal comets, apparently one of the things that's super weird about 3i Atlas is that it seems to be leaving a tail towards the sun, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. Well, I don't know if Randall brought that up, but there's this other video I brought. I think it's this one. Yeah. So we don't have to watch this. It's a full 20-minute video. I'll leave a link to it. But this is the Thunderbolts Project, and this is a YouTube channel that talks about like electric universe theory.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, their take on 3i Atlas is that the electric universe theory, this idea of like a plasma universe, like of the electrical interactions, can explain some of the weirdness of the comet, like the green color and the tail not pointing in the correct direction and stuff like that. So I don't know if you want to watch a few minutes of this or whatever.
I'd like to hear a little bit of it if it's got a little introductory, little snippet in the beginning.
Yeah, let's check it out.
Both interstellar visitors, 3i Atlas and Swan, remain moving targets. Their unpredictability has fueled waves of speculation, and no shortage of clickbait. In this video, we'll set aside the noise and focus on what has been firmly observed so far, with particular attention to the anomalies that challenge the standard dirty snowball comet model. As of 30th of September 2025, here is where things stand. In July 2025, astronomers detected a remarkable interstellar visitor, 3i Atlas. First identified by the Atlas telescope, its designation marks it as the third interstellar object ever discovered. From the very beginning, its behaviour defied expectations. It brightened rapidly, revealed a strikingly unusual morphology, and even appeared to eject material toward the Sun, a phenomenon that classical comet theory finds difficult, if not impossible, to explain. Mainstream models based on the dirty snowball hypothesis predict that cometary activity should be dominated by sublimation. Ice is heating and venting as they approach the Sun. Yet 3i Atlas consistently violates these assumptions. For proponents of the electric universe EU model, however, such anomalies are not contradictions, but opportunities to observe plasma physics in action. This object is expected to reach perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun, on October the 29th, 2025, and pass within 1.8 AU, roughly 270 million kilometers of Earth, on December the 19th. Close enough for detailed observation, yet distant enough to pose no threat, 3i Atlas provides a rare window into the behavior of an interstellar comet in real time. The anomalies of 3i Atlas. Observers have catalogued several features that challenge classical cometary expectations. Firstly, a sun-facing plume. Dust and gas extend toward the Sun, where thermal sublimation should be minimal. Secondly, a CO2-dominated coma. Observations from SPHEREX and JWST reveal unusually high CO2 relative to water. This ratio is rare even among solar system comets, suggesting a fundamentally different chemistry or an alternative process at work. Thirdly, rapid brightening. Sudden increases in activity and changing coma morphology occur unpredictably as a comet nears the Sun. And fourth, non-gravitational accelerations. Jets, dust motions and fragmentations are inconsistent with sublimation-driven thrust models. Each of these anomalies highlights the limitations of conventional cometary theory, while simultaneously providing a rich dataset for EU model analysis. Electric comets, a conceptual overview.
Yeah, let's do a little bit of this.
Comets are not just icy bodies, but electrically charged objects interacting with heliospheric plasma, the Sun's electric field, and surrounding currents. Electrical currents flowing between the comet and the Sun produce glowing discharges, focused jets, and plasma sheaths that shape both the coma and the tail. A striking example comes from NASA's Deep Impact mission to Comet Tempel 1 in 2005. While Thornhill and other EU proponents have long argued that the narrow filament-like jets, high-temperature hotspots and sharply sculpted surfaces observed by spacecraft are far more consistent with plasma discharges than with sublimation alone. Tempel 1 revealed phenomena that make perfect sense under the electrical model, yet remain puzzling under the traditional icy snowball view. For example, the coma's shape reflects electromagnetic forces, not just gas dynamics, allowing sunward plumes and anti-solar tails to coexist. Volatile release can be electrically stimulated rather than solely thermally driven, explaining unusual gas compositions and unexpected timing. Viewed through this lens, 3I Atlas's unusual features, its sunward glow, rapid brightening, and CO2-dominated emissions, are not anomalies but natural consequences of electrical interactions with the surrounding plasma. The sunward glow. Hubble images revealed a dramatic plume stretching toward the Sun, 10 times longer in that direction than across. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb described this as, quote, unprecedented. Why does this matter? Well, according to the standard comet theory, such a feature should not exist. Dust and gas are supposed to be pushed away from the Sun, sculpted by radiation pressure and the solar wind. A sunward plume is, within the classical framework, impossible. Within the electric universe model, this is exactly what we should expect. An electrically charged nucleus, immersed in the heliospheric plasma, develops asymmetric discharges concentrated on the sunlit side. Charged particles then accelerate along local electric fields, guided by the comet's fluctuating charge and its current pathways into the surrounding plasma. The outcome? A brilliant sunward-facing plume alongside the traditional anti-solar tail. Polarimetry, dust under the light.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. So the tail is still there and moving in the right direction, but the plume...
There's a sunward facing plume,
but still a tail that moves in the opposite direction of the Sun.
Right.
So it's like, it's almost as if there is something pushing it towards the Sun, or an attraction to the Sun.
Yeah. So if you think of it like electrically,
if you were to think electrically,
right?
yeah.
So
it could be a charge.
Think
that's
of
pulling it as a...
Think of like the base environment of the solar system, right? Which is whatever charge is coming out of the Sun with the solar wind. I imagine there's some sort of like static charge
associated
based
with it,
on this material flying, right? And then if you are coming through that medium,
that charge,
that sure reminds me a lot of like the walking across a carpet, right? Like, and you could build up these like charge differential, which could cause weird like outbursts and stuff of static electricity. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of
something grounded or oppositely attracted.
Right.
So
so if there are already these electrical channels, then in the case of like 3I Atlas, it may have come with a different default charge than like objects that have been part of our solar system the whole time, like solar system cometary objects that are living in the Sun's solar wind their whole life, right?
Right.
They don't necessarily have a charge differential the same way this interstellar object that is not a part of the sun's influence, as it comes into the solar system, that differential between whatever charge it had and what the solar wind is influencing, that we may be seeing a play of the sort of different electrical environments of the two interacting.
Which does give a lot of credit or credence to the electric universe idea, because you would have, if you're going to give that theory any weight, you then have to assume that all of the other comets we've seen are within the sun's influence or somehow otherwise the same charge, so they aren't affected in the same way. So they are the same charge, whether they have the same or similar trajectories around the sun or close proximities to the sun or whatever.
Right.
They are off-gassing away because they are of the same charge to the sun, so they're not being attracted.
But similar to how,
because this is an interstellar
when lightning
object
strikes, it's finding whatever path is the path.
That's why it's all jagged.
Right. Whatever is the path of least electrical resistance to make ground. But also when you view it in slow-mo, there's a arc coming up from the ground to meet it in the sky.
Yeah.
It could be a similar effect where there's like essentially some arcing coming up off of the comet itself
from the sun.
That whatever pathway is there is leading the gas to follow that for a little bit, which may explain the sunward facing plume. I don't know.
Yeah, like a bunch of tiny, each individual dust particle that's oppositely charged to the sun is finding its own pathway towards the sun because of this this pole.
Right.
And so the sun and this object are connected, however distant they may be. It doesn't matter because the sun's solar reach is so vast. So that it would become more prominent the closer it gets to the sun. That forward-facing plume towards the sun would get more and more prominent as it got closer, right? Or
as
would there be shedding
as the two objects are seeking electrical equilibrium with each other
until they find that equilibrium, it would be prominent. But then eventually there would be some kind of change because it would find equilibrium, and then you'd maybe see some kind of spectacular release of energy or flipping of the charge, which when you see in an electrical circuit, it's a spark.
Right. Anyway, I found that video pretty fascinating. Randall Carlson's video was really interesting. And then I don't remember the other one I saw this week, but I think this is what sort of led me onto it. So I brought this
Reddit thread.
This Reddit thread, yeah. Cool. Let me see if I can zoom in on that. This is really crappy quality, but here you guys go. So this is a Reddit thread about 3i Atlas that I found. It says, I'm a PhD researcher working with the European Space Agency with ongoing access to the combined observational data for 3i Atlas. For months, I have been part of a formal working group that has tried and failed to reconcile this object's behavior with any known class of natural celestial body. The official position is that 3i Atlas is a uniquely active but otherwise natural comet. The position is no longer tenable, and the silence from leadership on the cognitive dissonance this requires is becoming a serious professional issue for a growing number of us. It feels like a mistake in the data until you've checked it 100 times with all available instruments. This object is venting about 150 kilograms of gas and dust every single second. We see it, yet it does nothing. It's like watching a howitzer fire a shell with absolutely zero recoil or smoke or bang. It's a constant, violent event with no consequences that is a disgusting violation of basic physics. The only way the physics works is if the object has the mass of a small moon crammed into a space no more than 2 to 3 kilometers across. So it's saying based on the amount of outgassing it's doing, it should be affecting the thing's trajectory.
But it's
unless
not,
the thing is so massive that the mass is preventing it from that it's deceptively massive, and that way the outgassing isn't powerful enough to knock it off course.
I see, yeah.
The lower models give us a limit of 33 billion tons, which just creates a second worse problem.
It would be a freaking...
Finding a fucking mountain with an interstellar trajectory is statistically impossible.
Yeah,
our surveys have only just started. To find an object this massive this soon means that the galaxy isn't just dotted with debris, it's swarming with them. The models are wrong by a factor of 10,000. Our entire picture of what gets ejected from solar systems is fundamentally, grotesquely flawed. Or this object isn't debris at all, and that is the quiet and terrifying conclusion we are being discouraged from discussing.
It makes you think, man, what could be pushing that much mass? What if there is something that's creating these masses all over the universe in black holes? We don't know where or if that anything that falls in a black hole comes out somewhere else.
I mean, and that's a theory. I mean, I don't know how you would confirm something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun theory that I just came up with as we were talking about it.
If the electric universe model is true, then maybe there are electrical circumstances that can happen that draw these things together so that they can form outside of star systems, which might explain like weird compositions of elements and whatnot. I don't know. Yeah.
Having something so massive like that, you would think it would have a different, like, I don't know. If it was just randomly super massive, I guess just massive compared to what you would expect.
Yeah.
But not necessarily so massive that it's like a planet or something.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going here because there's a few posts here. It says, you look at what's actually in the gas, it gets worse. We're seeing pure atomic nickel steaming off. It's happening at temperatures where it should be frozen solid. This isn't gradual like ice turning to vapor. It's a switch. The nickel production is insanely sensitive to sunlight. A tiny change in heat, and it just shuts off. There's only one way you get that, a breakdown of a parent molecule. The only option is nickel tetracarbonyl, something we use in industrial refining. It explains everything, especially why there's no iron, but it is not a naturally occurring compound. What the hell is a synthetic chemical doing on a rock which we think has been in space for billions of years? And the dust it's shedding is just as fucked up. We measure how light reflects off of it. Its polarization tells you about the texture of the particles. Every comet, every asteroid, they all fall within a certain range. This thing's data comes back so far off what's expected. Our director insisted we were fucking up for the best part of a week until we repeated the result. The only way to get these numbers is if the dust grains are something else entirely, not sand, not ice, large, incredibly complex particles, black and porous as smoke. It's not natural dust. It's a manufactured material. The chemistry is wrong. The physics is wrong. It's a perfectly self-consistent system of wrongness, as though its whole purpose is to make us doubt ourselves.
Yeah, right. Like a 3-body problem.
So I think what this is showing is, this galactic interstellar object velocities, the galactic velocities of the interstellar object. So it's got Oumuamua, and then 2I, I forget what that one, I can't read it, but I forget what it's called, Borisov, I think, and 3I Atlas. So it's showing the curves of these versus, I'm guessing this gray is like the standard. I don't know how to read this thing.
The average or something, maybe. Yeah.
Iron, this is Fe/H, is that iron hydrogen?
Iron and hydrogen.
Yeah, I don't know. And then seems like the grayed out area is like the standard that their model predicts. And then
like somewhere within that zone is what the model predicts. Yeah.
Right. Then it says here, and it gets worse, Hubble and Webb see a feature that shouldn't exist. Faint, greasy smear of a tail pointing straight at the sun. Supposedly, a massive CO2 jet is firing from its sun-facing side, powerful enough to lift heavy water ice grains that sunlight can't easily push away. A violent directional engine. Okay, fine, but it isn't rotating. We stared at it for days on end. Its brightness doesn't change, not by a fraction of a percent. It's a fucking dead flat line. That's what this is showing. This is the brightness.
Yeah.
A jet that powerful on a rotating body would create a pulse, a flicker, a rhythm. We see absolute, perfect, unwavering stillness. The explanation for the tail requires a violent directional event. The observation of its light requires a perfectly uniform cloud. You can't have both. One is a lie. Either the model for a tail is bullshit, or that cloud isn't natural. Then there's the heat. The fucking thing is cold. It's absorbing gigawatts of raw solar energy, enough to power a small city. We calculate the energy budget and there's a massive surplus. The heat has to go somewhere. It should be driving off enormous plumes of water vapor, but the water isn't there. It's like pointing a blowtorch at an ice cube and watching it refuse to melt. The object has found a way to either dispose of or regulate an enormous thermal load to keep its surface locked at a specific low temperature. And that's before you even look at the path it took to get here. Its trajectory is a statistical joke. It's a perfect low angular momentum orbit, the kind that guarantees a close pass. The physicists who model this stuff are blunt. There is no known natural process that filters massive objects onto these trajectories. It wasn't just a random encounter. For all intents and purposes, the thing was delivered from the darkness. I think that's commenting on the fact that it's only like 5% off of the plane of the ecliptic.
Oh yeah.
Or the solar disk, like the plane of the solar system.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's almost it would be too poetic for something like this to have come into our solar system around the same time as you get people talking about like the idea of like the 3-body problem and like
this
idea that like there might be
we're approaching closer to Chris Bledsoe's like
and then we're also like getting closer to like UAP disclosure and like this might be the thing that breaks science enough to allow people to reimagine the theories of which have taken such a strong hold on societies at large.
And then there was another video I looked at that kind of went off of like this sort of idea, but another thing is like it just passed Mars. And so apparently they had pointed a bunch of the Mars orbiters to take photos. But those are all like kept by the space agencies and they have to be released. However, the Perseverance rover that's on Mars, its cameras were able, those are public access. They just stream to the internet.
They're like live streaming.
Yeah, and so amateur astronomers were able to take the images coming off of the Perseverance and process it using the advanced math and stuff that astronomers know how to do to combine multiple images. And they were able to get little faint images of 3i, and I think we showed those last week, the ones that just look like a little smudge.
Yeah.
But as of whenever I looked at this last, and I don't know if the stuff has been released since, but these amateur astronomers were able to take this Perseverance data, process it, and release it to the public. And none of the big space agencies that have orbiters around Mars have released any of the Mars, the photos
Images
from those devices.
They got to send them in to get doctored.
Yeah, right.
Put a red tint on it.
So that's also contributing to the like speculation and conspiracy of this whole 3i Atlas thing.
Yeah.
Is that why
they're not being as forthcoming as you would want from public space agencies?
This is just, if it is just a random interstellar object, like just release the stuff as it comes in. What's the big deal?
Let the world see it. Yeah.
But the delay is suspicious.
Like even if it is just a comment that's very suspicious, and it's the only reason that you're not releasing it would be because you want to make sure you can fit it into your little narrative of how physics works and stuff. Like that's just such a opposite of what science should be standing for.
Well, it's just you can't do that and then complain about people
conspiracies and like
being conspiratorial.
Yeah.
Like you are acting in the exact way that causes these conspiracies.
You're doing exactly what a conspirator would do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, anyway, for all I know, because I think it was about a week ago I saw that. For all I know, they've been released since then. I haven't done a search.
Yeah, we'd have to look it up.
We'll give further updates as we go.
Yeah, because this 3i Atlas is supposed to do the close pass in December from the Earth, right? So we're gonna probably get some like Earth-based telescope pictures of this thing as it passes Earth in like December 19th or something like that. I
believe right now it's moved to the point of being basically behind the sun, where it's basically not visible from Earth for now until basically the beginning of December. Yeah. Anyway, pretty fascinating stuff.
So cool.
Cool.
All right, well, let's take a little break, and we'll come back, and we'll probably go through a couple more. Man, we don't have to go through all of these, but we'll go through a couple more of these clips that we prepared, and then we'll get into OWASP to finish off this chapter.
Finish off this chapter we started.
Yeah. All right, we'll see y'all in a couple of minutes.
My attributes, nor do I see past what I see. I'm a firm believer in believing, but to believe in you, I must first believe in me. So tell me your reasons for not telling me, I'll tell you how not to be. I have been a patron of the truth. One time is one too many to be misused. And you give me the smile that I was oh so used to. I won't have the courage to give what I deserve to you. So tell me your reasons for not telling me, and I'll tell you how not to be. Will you be the reason and I'll be the relief? Let's talk about how not talking is killing me. I had a feeling to constitute my attributes. Well, normally I just see past what I see. And to be a believer, you must first believe. And I wanna believe in us, but I don't believe in me. So tell me your reasons for not telling me, I'll tell you how not to be. How not to be. Will you be the reasons and I'll be the relief? Let's talk about how not talking is killing me. Will you be the reasons and I'll be the relief? Have I told you how not talking is killing me?
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that.
That was TJ McNulty, and the song is called Not Talkin'.
Ain't no talking. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that. We're back. Maybe we'll play another clip or two or one.
Yeah. What's this? Billy Carson, huh?
I didn't even know it was from Billy Carson when I first saw it.
Oh, yeah.
But then I clicked on him and just started going through his stuff. But yeah, so this is another guy's channel, obviously, that he's reposting. But yeah, it's a really good side by side of current technology with ancient structures as well. So
cool.
Yeah, let's just watch it. We'll riff about it after.
All right.
These things are amazing. They're laser engravers and they're from China. It's a relatively new technology, but you can take a rock, any rock, and basically engrave any design into it. You can take any rock or stone and just place it underneath this engraver and it'll just laser it out. You create the design on the computer. It's very easy, basically all automated. But
Where's the material go?
This ancient structure was apparently carved using hammer and chisel 1200
in the air.
years ago. But when some experts look at it, it seems like there's marks of machinery, almost like a laser has done its work over there. It certainly doesn't look like the jaggedness you would see from hammer and chisel. And it's a really common theory, keeping in mind that this structure was apparently made out of one piece of stone. It was carved straight out of the mountain, exactly as it is, from the top down. But when you see inside of it, when you see through the structure, it just seems so unnatural. It's not like anything else we find. It certainly seems like something that would have been lasered out of the mountain, in that perfect square shape that it is. Anyway, as always, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I thought this was interesting.
This laser engraving.
These things are amazing.
Nuts.
Laser engraving.
That's so cool. Where's all the material going, though?
Man, it's just getting vaporized.
Being vaporized? Dang.
Into the air.
That's really cool. It's like 3D laser printing.
Yeah. Of whatever material you wanted to cut out.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's specific materials it can work with.
Sure.
Or is designed
but the fact
to
that
work
it's
with.
working on rocks is pretty crazy.
That is.
So you get something that's like softer than diamond and it can potentially work on.
Yeah, I mean,
something soft enough to be lasered.
It's interesting because, so that makes me think of like Praveen Mohan and all his content.
Yep.
About all the structures in India.
Yep.
I think the structure he's talking about that was carved, that's in India.
Or in that part of the world, at least, yeah.
I think it's in India, though, because I'm pretty sure Praveen Mahan talked about it.
Well, that one structure, when we were talking about Praveen, reminded me of it when you saw the little clip of this person kind of putting their finger up and behind it.
Yeah, that might
showing
even
how
be,
the precision. Yeah, I think that
might
is
even be
from
Praveen's
that.
finger.
But like the precision and the accuracy and the minute details engraved into these walls of these you know, palaces or whatever are insane. And the details of it.
Like when you have that detailed and you're carving out of bedrock and like talk about not getting a second shot at things, right?
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
Like the entire
and doing
temple.
it perfectly and doing it so perfectly the way it looks.
Right.
Like walking through something like that. Obviously I haven't done it myself, but like you see the videos of people walking through those temples and stuff. And it's like
they're gigantic, dude.
And they're basically bedrock.
That
they're carved into.
Yeah.
It's insane. And it kind of lends to what we were talking about earlier with the electric universe and how that could be a potential theory for like how the universe, and if these ancient cultures, like, yeah, they may have like what we expect an ancient or an advanced ancient culture to be like are what we are now.
Yeah.
But if they were able to tap into some other aspect of the universe that we are either rejecting or we have forgot and we're just not, we don't think it's possible or whatever, for whatever reason. But they had tapped into this electric universe, you know, if that's correct, like maybe they are tapping into it via locations like the pyramids and like these other generators of energy that may be pulling, you know, electricity out of the atmosphere and like being able to like use it for whatever need they have. And they don't need all of this industrial stuff that we have to produce energy. They are just tapping into the ether, the electric universe in some way.
Yeah, well, I mean, if temples like that are going to be carved out of lasers, then
you need a lot of energy.
You need a lot of energy.
Exactly. And if you have infinite source of a lot of energy, it makes it a lot easier for these things to happen.
It just makes it more and more mysterious why we're not finding like the tools, right?
Because maybe they use what would look to us as a primitive tool, but maybe it had some other property that we aren't aware of, right? Maybe the chisel was the vibratory, you know, like conduit by which you are tapping into this like wireless free energy. You know, maybe there is some sort of like process or like belief or way at which to like imbue certain items with certain qualities using that technology, that energy being harnessed from the ether. And that would make sense why you're not seeing plastics, you're not seeing all these things that we think are industrial and like, you know, would show that they are advanced. Like you're not going to see all these like byproducts that like we are seeing. There would be less and less of it because if the tool itself could be harnessed or imbued with some sort of energy.
Well, also like, let's say we continue developing, right? Like at some point we're going to get into this type of technology. With the problem for a lot of these technologies is the energy requirements, right?
That's right.
Like for instance, like we have designs for what would be usable warp drives.
Right.
But they're dependent on energy and some of them negative energy, right? And things that we think may possibly theoretically exist. But let's say we get to a point where we just have crazy energy. We can start employing technologies that would have been wasteful when you have limited energy capacity.
So that could be another aspect.
And then
of it.
you fast forward another couple millennia from there, and how long would it take for our more advanced descendants to clean up all the mess we created in our industrial time, right? Because if we come up with some way to just have all this energy, then we can start to process all this garbage we've left around the world, and we can start to clean it up. And and
let the world.
We may consciously erase the footprint of our industrial technology.
Lineage.
So some people have said like it could be that like they went down a different branch of the tech tree, but it may be that you have to go through where we're at to unlock the tech tree.
Maybe
that looks like this.
Yeah, maybe.
And if so, it may be a section of the tech tree that doesn't necessarily leave the sorts of industrial imprints and maybe even be advanced enough to erase its former pollution, right?
Well, this is going to go a little bit further down the conspiracy rabbit hole, but like it's not so crazy if you were to give some credence to these ideas, obviously, but that if what has happened before is something that is known amongst some sort of elite class of the human population
who has access to the real history,
who has access to the real history and the real knowledge of these ancient, structures and all the other questions that we're wondering, right? That knowing that they knew that another iteration, so some calamity happened, wipes everybody out, start from scratch. The mystery religions throughout history are maintaining this knowledge over time, and it's not so far-fetched to think that they would lead us, the general population, down a path to be controlled by them, the elites, the knowledge keepers of the human race, basically. And it can be corrupted, right? So like what starts out as like just maintaining the knowledge can turn to, hey, like this is the perfect ability. We have the biggest, chance of being able to be successful in manipulating the entire population to
if
not
we can keep them
understand
frozen in a technology that is dependent on oil or dependent on certain
fossil
things
fuels
and certain things that the mining or procurement of can be controlled, right?
While whoever they may be, have access to the actual real technology, and maybe that's what these UAPs, this break off society, this breakaway society that for probably generations would have been living maybe somewhere not so far away, maybe somewhere in the oceans, maybe somewhere, and they're able to continue to control the happenings on Earth because they're tapped into all the different power structures around them.
Right.
But they themselves live completely separate from us, even though they live here.
Yeah.
But they live in a completely different paradigm than we live in.
Okay.
That's pretty far down the rabbit hole, but
I mean,
if you were to connect some of these kind of things in a storyline,
like it's the type of thing.
It's not so far fetched.
No,
right?
It seems like the type of thing you talk about when you're far down the rabbit hole. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like it seems like a conversation you would have with like Jason Giorgiani, Reza, or whatever, Jason Giorgiani. That did you see that interview he did with Jesse Michaels? I think we talked about this last week a little bit, but
Giorgiani, is he the Ancient Aliens guy?
I mean, I don't know, like saying the Ancient Alien guy.
One of the more prominent ones, I would say.
Jesse. It was this episode a couple weeks back. This guy here.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of a different guy.
And I'll show you guys who I'm talking about.
That's right. I remember.
Nope. Yeah. So you guys can see it's this dude here. So it's this video. Aliens invented religion to control humanity. It's cool stuff. Also, what is going on with these? The members only versions.
So he
links.
He posts the members only ones first, so they have immediate access to it, and they're extended length.
But this one's shorter.
Well, I think they're just edited differently, but
maybe.
It's probably just editing, but I think he does do like member only, like extended ones, or just like ones that nobody else gets to see. But
Dude,
they've been doing this
FOMO.
now.
I want to know what's on those.
I know.
Cool. All right. Well, what's this next one you brought? Yeah, this one. The reality of the UFO subject.
I don't remember.
All
To be
right.
honest with you.
Well,
Let's check it out.
Take a look.
There's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory. They did not have an easily explainable pattern.
Imagine a technology that can do 600 to 700 G-forces, that can fly at 13,000 miles an hour, that it can evade radar, and that can fly through air and water and possibly space. And oh, by the way, has no obvious signs of propulsion, no wings, no control surfaces, and yet still can defy the natural effects of Earth's gravity. That's precisely what we're seeing. The government has already stated for the record that they're real. I'm not telling you that. The United States government is telling you that.
These vehicles seem to have unlimited loiter time, which we don't have. Then the acceleration is far beyond anything that we're capable of.
Well, I don't believe they're coming from foreign adversaries. If they were, why, that would suggest that they have a technology which is in a whole different sphere than anything we understand. And frankly, China and Russia just aren't there.
Do we have any sensors underwater to detect on submerged UAPs? Anything that is in the ocean or in the seas?
So I think that would be more appropriately addressed in closed session, sir.
Now, I know what you've seen is what those Navy pilots saw in 2004, and there have been some 300 sightings since then. And I've talked to those pilots, and they know they saw something, and their radars locked onto it. And then all of a sudden it was here on the surface, and then it's there. And they don't know what it is, and we don't know what it is.
Lieutenant Graves told us pilots training off the Atlantic coast see things like that all the time.
Every day. Every day for at least a couple of years.
Wait a minute, every day for a couple of years?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I think some of the phenomena that we're seeing continues to be unexplained and might in fact be some type of phenomenon that is the result of something that we don't yet understand, and that could involve some type of activity that some might say constitutes a different form of life.
Interesting. That was a cool little
summation of all of the stuff.
Yeah,
that idea.
This is like in the more grounded disclosure wing of the UFO movement, right? Of the like government whistleblowers and whatnot.
Yeah, and it was kind of a good little edited version of all of the different accounts.
Yeah,
and putting it with some nice kind of hopeful music and.
Yeah, I think there's enough evidence out there that even in, I don't know, I think we're far beyond a point where it's whether or not this phenomena exists, and it's more like we should be moving on to what is it and what does it mean,
and
who the hell are these people,
and then allow the government and and however we have to do that, allow the government to release what they've been keeping on this subject for the last
the problem
50
is
years.
to trust them to not be manipulative with what they release, right?
Of course, yeah, which you can't guarantee, but if you give them reason to just let it all out by saying, hey, look, we know you've been lying to us. We know you've been doing all these bad stuff behind the scenes to like maintain this story of, you know, it being not
the
real.
amnesty
and
proposition. Like,
yeah, I mean, if somebody was murdering people and calling for murder, I think that kind of stuff is like, you made that call. I get that. Like, you maybe have to face some kind of justice for that.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it be something like putting you in prison for the rest of your life, or, you know, maybe you don't get your pension, or, you know, your family's not going to be set for life because you committed murder, you know, stuff like that. Like,
right.
I think that kind of stuff would be fair, but I do think broadly people who are just lying and people who are just covering it up and people who are just maintaining the status quo should be given amnesty.
Yeah.
But people who are committing horrific crimes in the name of this stuff, then maybe. But it would be, who do you charge, right? Do you charge the person who did the act, or the person who ordered the person to, you know, make that call? So I guess we'd have to have a bunch of Nuremberg type hearings and decide individually, case by case.
The problem with Nuremberg is they didn't get everyone, and the U.S. government decided to recruit some of those people and cover up their past and protect them from Nuremberg so that we could recruit them into our efforts.
Which, hey, but if the story gets out there, I get that some people might not feel justice for everything.
Yeah.
But if we can get to a point where we have this knowledge, I think that's worth it. I think it's worth to have some.
The baseline is just an acceptance that this phenomena is real.
Yeah. And then the
allowance of people to talk about it
moving forward, and stop this campaign to smear people's careers in order to silence them or to make it all seem foolish, or allow scientists and allow the scientists that they've been recruiting for years to go public and to talk to other scientists in the public sphere and start cooperating on these things. And I guarantee, it just seems obvious to me that it would be a very quick process of figuring out a lot of these questions.
But even that sort of assumption of the stuff being real is a pretty big adjustment to the Overton window.
Yeah.
And it would,
it's a big move.
It's like the 100th monkey effect, right? Or the 4-minute mile and stuff like that, right? Where as soon as it becomes everyday knowledge that this stuff is in fact real, and that's just known to the public, it's unpredictable to be able to guess what ripple effects that's going to have on society, on science, especially.
True.
If all of a sudden all of the Neil deGrasse Tysons of the world who've been professional UFO skeptics can no longer argue that the phenomena is in fact real, then what happens when our entire scientific establishment moves forward with the knowledge that this is possible?
Exactly. Yeah. And how does
that affect rocketry? How does that affect satellite launches? How does that affect the development of science and the underlying assumptions of what we think is possible? Right.
And how quickly that might change things and move the goalpost, and how society in effect will change based on that, because new discoveries, new technologies, new this, new that,
and not just America, but internationally, right?
Yeah,
and how does that change geopolitics?
Yeah.
But anyway, let's check out, this is the last one here before we take our next break. What do you got?
Yeah, this is Randall Carlson's this is kind of a good little summation of his idea of where in the Azores, the Atlantis, it would be, and kind of a good little graphic of his ideas.
Yeah, so Randall Carlson, if you aren't familiar, he believes in Atlantis, and his pet theory for where Atlantis was is the Azores. And the Azores is this island chain west of the British Isles.
Yeah.
I think it's a little further north. It's more like west of the British Isles, I think.
Well, I think it stretches it's a long stretch of islands that goes down pretty far south too.
I don't know if it goes down that far south, but yeah. Anyway, let's check this out. Gotta do the whole refresh dance.
Okay, so what we have right here is the Straits of Gibraltar, the Strait of Gibraltar, flanked by the Pillars.
Oh.
It's the Pillars of Heracles, which mark the gateway between the Atlantic over here to the west, the Mediterranean over here to the east. And there were actually islands in here that are now sunk.
Wow.
So anybody sailing west through here would have come to islands. And there was an island situated in front of the straits, which are by you, called the Pillars of Heracles. The island was larger than Libya and Asia put together and was the way to other islands. And from these, you might pass to the whole of the opposite continent.
Wow.
Which surrounds the true ocean. For this sea, which is within the Straits of Heracles, is only a harbor, having a narrow entrance. But that other is the real sea, and the surrounding land may be most truly called a boundless continent.
Wow.
Here's the Azores Plateau.
Oh.
You could picture that all of the orange would have been above water.
Yeah, so that last graphic they posted up there with the kind of heat map of the elevation, how it showed like how like this the tip of the island kind of like spreads out to like a ring around an inner higher plateau, but there's a ring of water around where that would be. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, so here's the straits.
Right here, yeah. So there's the island basically right where your hand cursor is.
Yeah, it's these here.
Yeah, and it goes way down south too.
Yeah.
And then those.
Yeah, I
so
envisioned this further north, but you're right.
I mean, it kind of goes north a bit, but there's little pots that's a big, yeah.
I don't think that's part of it here, but there does seem to be some sort of mass here too.
But yeah, that's kind of it.
Yeah,
and then you see how
talking about the Azores,
and you see how like this main section of this kind of like Y-looking feature.
And there's already islands there right now.
Yep. But yeah, these are just the tips of the peaks of the mountains that would be on the top of these plateaus.
So as Randall explains, like he's a fan of this, what is the term? Isostatic depression.
Yeah. Theory for how the Earth changed at the end of the Ice Age.
Yeah. So if you look at the pole, there's only so much ice that we have right now. And obviously Antarctica has a lot more than the North, but during the Ice Age, there would have been massive glaciers that came all the way down into like the Great Lakes northern states.
Yeah.
And that would have gone
and
through
into
a bunch
Asia and Russia.
Right. And so with that much ice, that ice is no longer in the ocean, or that ice is no longer in the ocean as water, and therefore the ocean levels would have been lower. And basically they think the calculation is that about 400 feet lower during the previous ice age.
Mm-hmm.
And so things like the Azores, which are already have juts of islands now, all of this land masses that are currently underwater, a bunch of this would have been above water.
Yep.
And Plato's description being that you have to go through the Pillars of Heracles and you just keep going west and that you hit Atlantis, like that is a good candidate.
It's a good location for it, yeah.
Right.
And like you can see there could be some like satellite islands that could have popped up at some point.
Islands here, which there already are, but there would have been more.
Yeah. And you could think of that as a gate too, like an island chain to like a gate. Anyway, but yeah, it's growing on me. But if you look out, zoom out, the Eye of the Sahara is not all that far away from that either.
Right.
And that the Eye of the Sahara could have been built in the image of Atlantis at some point if it wasn't a part of Atlantis.
Well, Atlantis was supposed to be an empire. And
right, so it could have been a part of the whole empire.
So there's a difference between like its capital city and all the different territories that it owned. And so there's no reason it has to be either or. It could be both.
Right.
The whole Eye of the Sahara, Mauritania.
It makes sense to me that
it's all kind of within the same region.
Yep. And it just makes sense to me that like if the people who lived in Atlantis also settled that part of Africa, you would build cities to like now, the larger country and like its cities are look a lot alike is what I'm trying to say. So like maybe you would build something on the continent of Africa to look like the island chain of Atlantis, the main body of the,
or maybe you would
society.
Find something like a volcanic crater in Mauritania that could still just be a volcanic crater, but if during that time there was water there, which that's the thing that I have a hard time with is because, I didn't actually talk about this isostatic depression. So the thing is with more and more ice on the top, that has a ton of weight to it. We're talking like in some places like 4 miles of ice, and
pressing
just the sheer weight of that pressing down on the crust of the earth. He says to imagine it like if you're pushing into like a pillow or like your butt going into the cushion of a couch, right? Like where your butt goes down, it's going to create a displacement downward. That's going to create a displacement upwards elsewhere.
And outwards, yeah.
Yeah, up and out elsewhere. So in a similar way, if you put a bunch of weight down on the earth here,
you get a bulge
that's going to push down while other places are going to push up. And so once the ice age ends and all that ice melts, that's going to start coming upward and the other places are going to go downward in response, which could explain things like sinking islands.
Yeah, and so if you have those masses like the
and in fact
polar caps on top and bottom, it's pushing out in the center of the earth. At the equator is probably where it's most dramatic.
And my understanding is that geologists are still measuring that a bunch of the area of the United States is still moving down.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That the isostatic rebound is still happening, basically.
Oh, wow.
According to Randall, that's his take on it. But anyway.
Yeah, I haven't heard his full theory on like where the Azores were and stuff, and I still haven't listened to that entire episode, but it's a good spot for it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. All right, well,
take another break here.
Take a break. Let's see if we can finish out that Oahspe chapter before we end the episode. And
all right,
yeah, we'll be back.
See y'all in a minute.
Yeah, welcome. You're now tuned into Soul Food Radio, and this is Resurrection. Shout out to Hip Hop, to Dilla, Primo, No ID, Common Sense. I go by the name of M. Born. Yo, I staggered in the lab again, possessed by my soul that's deep inside my abdomen. I let it fly like javelins over the globe with my vocals. I'm traveling, belittling, bedazzle 'em. The chosen one like Anakin, immaculate from Sacramento. I'm accurate on any instrumental. Now here we go against the grain while I'm fighting demons. Keep believing that no matter what they're saying, gotta keep on chasing, cause you never know. Keep on dreaming. My heart is bleeding, breathing life into every line till they memorize every rhyme. Then I'll rest my eyes. I testify through my punchlines, cut like the lunch lines and touch the sky till the sun shines. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever make it home again. They say I'm too underground and I tell them thanks for noticing. I wrote this in my sleep, so in a sense it's ironic they've been sleeping on my music. Now we have something in common, like resurrection. Resurrection. I ride the rhythm like a street bike, running through the street lights. I get hyped, and rip mics took the wisdom from my windpipe. I've been dope, I've been nice, I'm insane, I ain't light. My pen game is skin tight, my wordplay is precise. I see life through the eyes of a child, so innocent. Young common sense, staring out through the picket fence. Resurrected through my pen, grew up in the dirty slums. And every penny that I earn, I've earned it like a purple one. Serving lunch, food for thought, I could've sworn I should've lost. Who would've thought I'd get across the other side and brush them off, lock them down, martial law. Serving raw like sushi rolls. Young, hungry, humble, but the flow is almost few below. Super cold, I could've known some kid I know would put us on with the same music that we grew up on. Sing along, cue the horns, prove I'm wrong. Barging like a mastodon, time tablet through my monologues like a vagabond. Resurrection. Resurrection. Resurrection.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Welcome back. All right. So
let's dive into some more of this OWASP.
Yeah. So if you recall, we were in the Book of Jehovah, and God was sort of, or Jehovah was sort of explaining the creation of life, the creation of earth, the creation of
Genesis.
Man. Remember, they introduced this idea of Simu, which is like primitive life, like jelly. They compared it to like jellyfish and like algae and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's like a neural connected network. Or
there was also a point of saying that not one creature came from another, that they were all created. So sort of argument against evolution and whatnot.
It's kind of a panspermic idea, like we were talking about earlier. It's like it's all is as it is, and as it permeates, it's
right. So let's go into chapter 6 here, because this is the chapter. This, and I don't know how far, but like this is one of the parts I was like remembering in my head. Where I was like, we got to cover this.
All right, cool.
So chapter 6 of the Book of Jehovah. When man comprehended the earth, he looked upward, and Jehovah saw him and knew the desires of his soul. So Jehovah sent his son Uz, that's U-Z, and Uz spake, saying, Hear me, O man, the mysteries of heaven and earth will I clear up before thy judgment. Thou art the highest and comest to the chiefest of all kingdom. From the great Jehovah shalt thou learn wisdom, and none shall gainsay thee. Bethink thee, O man, of the magnitude of thy Father's kingdom and his places in the firmament. Save I take thee into the heavens above, thou canst not comprehend the places thereof. Man then rose up in spirit and ascended into the firmament. So this is like an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
Where Uz is taking man on a tour through the universe.
Right.
In like astral form is what it sounds like. It sounds like some sort of astral projection. Yeah, so man then rose up in spirit and ascended into the firmament, for his spirit had crystallized into separateness, and Uz and S ascended with him. S being that term for like spirit beings.
Yeah.
Speaking in the voice of the Father. And man beheld that each and everything in the firmament was orderly, and still each to itself located. Then spake Es, saying, Behold, O man, as a farmer soweth corn in one place, and wheat in another, and roots in another, and flax, everything in a separate place, even so doth Jehovah store the ingredients of which worlds are made, everything in its place. The substance of the iron in one place, the substance of the stones in another, the substance of the vegetable kingdom in another, and even so of the substance of the animal kingdom, and the oils and sand, for he hath places in the firmament of heaven for all of them. So basically all of these elements that come together on our planet are all basically stored in the heavens in these
outside the
neat
firmament
rows, right?
Outside the firmament.
No, well, the firmament being like the waters of heaven, right? Like the space. So, what I envision that he's describing here is like nebulas of different materials, and that like Earth travels and encounters these, and they like drop onto Earth as Earth makes its orbit through the galaxy. But we haven't gotten that far into the description yet. Everything in its place. Okay. These, these that thou sawest are the Agi and the GA. So that's A''Ji is the Agi, and then GA is JI''AY. Weird terms, like we warned about, right? And the nebulae. And amidst them, in places, there is Simu also. Let no man say, yonder is hydrogen only, and yonder oxygen only. The divisions of the substances of his creations are not as man would make them. All elements are to be found not only in places near at hand, but in distant places also. When the Father driveth forth his worlds in the heavens, they gather a sufficiency of all things. So as like the planets are moving throughout the universe, they're going through these different clouds of
collecting what it is that is all of the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So
in like,
all
okay.
Yeah. So also cometh it to pass that when a corporeal world is yet new and young, it is carried forth not by random, but purposely in the regions suited to it. Hence, there is time for Simu, a time for falling nebula, to bury deep in the forests of Simuan beds, to provide coal and manure for a time thereafter. So is there a time when the earth passeth a region in the firmament when sand and oil are rained upon it and covered up.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like a starter kit.
Yeah.
Like, oh, here's a new corporeal world. Let's put them in this zone. It's going to be the best temperature, the best, fit for it, and we'll rain down. And, it's got these,
its
universal winds, and
it's got all these things that are going to rain down and build it exactly the way I want it built.
As it needs to be built, yeah.
And gases bound and sealed up for coming generations of men. And man said, I am ashamed in thy sight, O Jehovah. I looked upward and said, behold, the sky, it is nothing. Then I said, it is true, the corporeal worlds are made of condensed nebula. But I saw not the corporeal world. So our planet is made of condensed nebula, is what he's saying. So,
so it's
because the Earth has spent
the physical nature of a
billions of years, traveling through these nebula. As it does so, it's collecting the material from them to make the Earth as Jehovah sees fit.
Interesting.
But I saw not the wisdom and glory of thy works. I locked thee up in coincidences and happenings. Thy unseen world hath become seen. The unreal hath become the real. Oh, that I had been mindful of thee. Oh, that I had not put thee afar, nor imagined laws and decrees. Teach thou me, O Jehovah, how was the beginning of man? How was it the first of the living that thou broughtest forth? So now, I don't know if this is like mankind or a specific man that is being given this tour, but they're asking, like, where did man come from now?
Okay.
Jehovah said, have I not declared myself in the past? In my works have I not provided thousands of years in advance? As I have shown system in the corporeal worlds, know thou, O man, that system prevaileth in the firmament. To the tree I gave life. To man I gave life and spirit also. And the spirit I made was separate from the corporeal life.
So that's the spirit as opposed to the body.
Right. To the out of Simu I made man, and man was but a tree, but dwelling in Hak. That's H-A''K.
Interesting.
But dwelling in Hak, and I called him Asu, and then in apostrophes it says Adam.
That reminds me again of the Secret History of the World's interpretation of the vegetable state of man, like the early aspects of man when it stretched across long distances, but it was the essence of what we are now, just before we were solidified in the corporeal, if you were to use these terms, the physical world.
Yeah.
We were plant-like and jelly-like,
and
connected and stretched over vast distances. We weren't firmly in place as actual human beings. Okay.
I looked over the wide heavens that I had made, and I saw countless millions of spirits of the dead that had lived and died on other corporeal worlds before the earth was made. I spake in the firmament, and my voice reached to the uttermost places. And there came in answer to the sound of my voice myriads of angels from the roadway in the heaven, where the earth traveleth. I said to them, behold, a new world I have created. Come ye and enjoy it. Yea, ye shall learn from how it was that with other worlds in ages past. So basically, in the path of where the earth is going to go, there's all these spirits, these spirits of the dead who have lived on other worlds in ages past. And God is saying to them, hey, I got this new world coming your way. Why don't y'all hop on for a ride when it passes by? Because you can witness how I create a new world.
Ooh, yeah. That's interesting. I was also thinking the idea of the you know, how the precession of the equinox and how like we are always moving through different ages and how there's like a cyclical nature of it and how like that could be like the time clock at which or the speed at which evolution and de-evolution and changes and, you know, happen to a world as it moves through the cosmos. And there may be an never-ending cyclical nature of it all, whether it be having to loop back on itself or just continually moving towards these cycles. Like there's always these ages as you move through and you encounter different things that are already set in the path at which you're going to, you know, move through.
Yeah.
Just based on science, right? Just based on our understanding of science. Like you don't have to go any further than that. We are moving through different pockets and spaces within the universe as time goes on.
The Milky Way
it's just
is moving
how
through
they
the
interact.
universe. The solar system is moving through the Milky Way.
Yep.
And our planet is moving around the solar system.
We're constantly at a
and
different
all of
point.
those motions will bring us into different
ages
or aspects of
and it's just the interaction between those different parts of the universe and how they interact with the macro and micro of life.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So it keeps going. There alighted upon the new earth millions of angels from heaven, but many of them had never fulfilled a corporeal life, having died in infancy, and these angels comprehended not procreation nor corporeal life, right? So like these spirits that had been created and only ever got to live to be an infant, they're angels now, right? But they've never had a life to live.
So
they're like, hey, let's go hang out here because it would be cool to
experience what they do when they live.
Right.
Yeah. That's why angels are often depicted as babies.
And I said, go and deliver Asu from darkness, for he shall rise in spirit to inherit my Etherean worlds. And now was the earth in the latter days of Simu, and the angels could readily take on corporeal bodies for themselves. Out of the elements of the earth clothed they themselves by force of their wills with flesh and bones, and by side of the Asuans took they on corporeal forms. So, they were able to just take form out of sheer will.
Right. Reminds me of the fallen angels of the Bible. And
it kind of does, right? And I said, go ye forth and partake of all that is on the earth, but partake ye not of the tree of life, lest in that labor ye become procreators, as if dead to the heavens whence ye came.
So you kind of get locked into the physical nature once you start like having babies.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, but those who had never learned corporeal things, being imperfect in wisdom, comprehended not Jehovah's words, and they dwelt with the Asuans who were tempted, and partook of the fruit of the tree of life. And lo and behold, they saw their own nakedness. And there was born of the first race, Asu, a new race called man. And Jehovah took earth out of the travail of Simu, and the angels gave up their corporeal bodies. Jehovah said, because ye have raised up those that shall be joint heirs in heaven, ye shall tread the earth with your feet, and walk by the sides of the newborn, being guardian angels over them, for they are of your own flesh and kin. Fruit of your seed have I quickened with my spirit, and man shall come forth with a birthright to my ethereal worlds. As I have quickened the seed of the firstborn, so will I quicken the seed to the end of the earth, and each and every man-child and woman-child born into life will I quicken with a new spirit, which shall proceed out of me at the time of conception. Neither will I give to any spirit of the higher or lower heaven power to enter a womb or a fetus of a womb and be born again. As the corporeal earth passeth away, so shall pass away the first race, Asu. But as I pass not away, so shall not pass away the spirit of man. So I think what it's saying here is that Jehovah creates the earth. He makes it filled with all the stuff it needs, and life is kickstarted, and he invites all these angels who had never had real corporeal lives down, and they start making bodies for themselves, and they start partaking in reproduction, right? And they create this race out of what they've done.
Yeah.
And that race is like the first man.
Right.
And then Jehovah basically says, all right, guys, you're no longer allowed to become flesh here. And all of the men that are born are going to be new spirits, newly created spirits coming forth out of me, rather than you guys are no longer allowed to go in and like incarnate into a womb.
Right. It set the boundary.
Yeah.
And because there's this new life there, it's almost as if Jehovah is like, let's stop, meddling in it, and let's see what happens with them on their own.
And also because you guys are responsible for the creation of this entity through your breaking of my commandment not to partake of the tree of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Because of that, your new job is to be down on the earth and be guardian angels for these new entities that are going to come forth.
This sounds a lot like the Anunnaki story, and how like the Anunnaki came down and partook in all that. Obviously they were here for the gold, but then they manipulated the beings on the earth to serve their purpose, and then in doing so, they created a new form of life, in which they were not supposed to have done, and then they were recalled back to heaven, but they were now tasked a new, I guess guard was put in place to like maintain the humans and guard them and watch over them and guide them.
The main difference from the Sumerian story being that in this, it doesn't seem like mankind was created as servants to them.
Right. Yeah.
And
there are some obvious
as a byproduct of them coming down, creating bodies for themselves, and then being like, "Hey,
see what happens when I do this."
Right. Let's get a little freaky deaky.
See what happens when I put this thing in that hole. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an interesting, you see how it's it's related to biblical texts, but it's got its own spin.
It kind of is drawing on a lot of ancient mystery stuff and biblical text, and the Sumerian text, and maybe some even the stuff the same kind of stuff that the Secret History of the World draws from and is pulling their information from. It's these stories that don't make sense alone, but when you put them to a story, they are very, interesting. When you give it a narrative outside of just what you hear from.
But it also sort of, and they're not super explicit with it, at least in what we've read, but it also sounds like there was a sort of native life forms and that they were maybe interbreeding with them.
Yeah, because it talks about how the Adam type character,
the Asuans
was not fully material.
Right.
It wasn't until these angels came down and started interacting that they pulled from this essence of what man was and created
also,
the man.
Yeah. And also there's this proclamation down by Jehovah that says you're no longer allowed to possess a womb, right? So you can't reincarnate anymore.
No more reincarnating into that.
Which assumes that they were, right?
Right. And that maybe the humans themselves can and will be continuing to do that.
Sure,
to reincarnate
but
into
these
the
angels
bodies.
basically lost their reincarnation privileges because they created a species that has inherited the spirit
of the
the angel spirits, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because they're born of like angels and whatever was already on earth, that because they're part angel, they also are part of the spirit entity, and
which makes them part
have a
of the
spiritual
creator.
self, right? And so they're bound to be angels in the future of their own, right? They're
Right.
bound to be these non-incarnate or these discarnate beings once their corporeal bodies die.
Right.
And so then because the angels created that situation, now it's the angels' job to
Maintain
protect
it.
them.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be fun to go through this. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it already. This
So-
conversations it's going to bring up, and the
Yeah, that was just one more chapter of this, and there's a couple more chapters of the Book of Jehovah.
Cool.
We just did chapter 6. There's 7 and 8 until the Book of Jehovah finishes. And then it moves on to the next book.
Yeah, that would be cool. Over the next handful of episodes, we
could just throw in like a chapter in a segment. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not super long, we can always kind of if it's possible, just finish a segment, finish a show with it or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super fascinating. I'd love to hear what you guys think and what you guys thought of the clips we were playing and the conversations we had about it. And we kind of jumped around to a handful of different topics, whether it be Atlantis or
this
UFOs
was a bit of a grab bag episode.
or OWASP, and then making connections with other previous things we've done.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, appreciate y'all hanging out with us today. If you guys want to get involved in the conversation, let us know what you think of this episode and other episodes, whether you be on this episode or maybe you click back and you're back at our older episodes. Feel free to comment on those too. We check it. So on YouTube or Rumble, you guys can find the full video podcast where you can see our faces while we're talking. I'll use this hand.
See my new sweet mustache?
Yeah, he's getting some nice curl going on that. So you guys got to check us out, YouTube and Rumble. Like, comment, subscribe. It all helps out the algorithm, push it to other people, and you'll also get more videos like this, whether it be us or some other content creator. If you guys want to email us directly, it's host@dualitycheck.net, or just go check out our website. It's got everything you might need.
It's got links to all of our social media. Here.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I got it. There you go.
Yeah, it's got links to all our social media, so you can find us on any of those. We are basically, well, I guess, never mind. But it's got all these different taglines here. So if you look on the side there, up at the top, there's a bunch of tags, and you can click on any of those if you're interested in any of those topics. The bigger ones are the ones that we talk about the most, that are referenced the most.
Yeah, so like if I click on Chris Bledsoe, these are all the episodes where we
Talk about him directly or
mention
indirectly,
him,
or
starting with like, the actual Chris Bledsoe episodes.
Yeah, which are some of our more popular ones.
Yeah,
and I think we covered everything there. Appreciate y'all. We'll see y'all next week. Later.
Adios.